Hello my dear students. With this lesson we are going to start the chemical context of life. What kind of chemicals are found in the living organisms? To understand that, we are going to divide into two main groups. The life chemical context include inorganics and organic compounds. Organic and inorganic. What does organic and inorganic mean? Inorganic compounds, the source of inorganic compounds are non-living environment. For example, inorganic compounds can be water, and water is obtained from the rivers, lakes, seas, oceans. But the main source of organic compounds are living organisms. For example, the sugars, carbohydrates, are organic, and the sugars, carbohydrates, for example, glucose, is synthesized by photosynthesis reaction with plants or other photosynthetic organisms. So, if the main source of the molecule is non-living, then we are going to call this inorganic. If the main source is living, then we are going to call it organic compounds. Please remember the differences between organic and inorganic compounds. Well, there are some essential elements of life. You know the elements from periodic table, and this 35 of the natural elements are known to be essential to life. They are mostly found in the living organisms. Essential to life, they are found in living organisms. The four of them is the most abundant four of them is carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. And these make up 96% of living matter. Other essential elements are phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, and potassium, and few other elements account for most of the remaining is 4%. Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and phosphorus and sulfur are found in all living organisms because living organism needs water, and water composed of hydrogen and oxygen. Also, carbon is the main carbon. It's found in the glucose, carbohydrate, proteins, lipids, and phosphorus and sulfur is important for amino acids, proteins. So they found in all living organisms. These are the naturally occurring elements in human body. Let's see the percentage of the elements in human body. For example, let's look at the oxygen. It's the most abundant element of human body. You see the percentage. The most abundant is oxygen. Then the second one is the carbon. Third, hydrogen, and the fourth, nitrogen. The 4% of human weight is composed of calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium. The elements making less than 0.01% of human body weight is called trace element. Trace element is found in human body or living organisms, but this trace element is found in very, very tiny amounts. For example, boron, chromium, cobalt, copper, iodine, iron, manganese, molybdenum, selenium, silicon, and tin. Trace element those required by an organism only minute quantities. Some trace elements such as iron are needed by all forms of life. Others are required only by certain species. They don't have to found in all living organisms, but other elements, essential elements, found in all living organisms. What is the importance of trace elements? For example, look at in these two pictures. The iodine trace element of iodine is important. You see there is a disease called goiter, an enlargement of thyroid gland, and it results from a deficiency, the lack of iodine. So these trace elements are important for the health of the living organisms. And the other photo shows, please look at the size of the length of the plants, the corn plant in two different lengths, because there is a nitrogen deficiency. In this core, nitrogen is abundant, and in this core, nitrogen is less abundant. So it's an experiment, and its experiment shows that nitrogen is an important element for the corn growth. We found some kind of elements in the form of compounds, and you know from the chemistry, when the elements in the form of compounds, the chemical structure or the physical structure is completely different. For example, this is sodium. It's a kind of metal. You can cut it with a knife. It's a not very hard metal. And chlorine is a kind of gas, poisonous gas. And this metal and this gas, when the sodium and chlor combine, this is the, you all know, structure of salt is produced, sodium chloride. So this is white, this is yellow, this is gray, and the compounds are all different from the elements which composed of this compound. Let's start the inorganic compounds. In this lesson we are only going to learn the inorganic compounds, and compounds divided into two main groups. The most important one is water. We are going to learn the characteristics of water, why the water is important for humans, for all living organisms. The other inorganic compounds is acids and bases, and the third one is the minerals and salts. So the most important one, characteristics of water. Water, it depends on the function of the cell, but water composed of 70 or 90% of the cell mostly in the cytoplasm. Therefore, we said that human body composed of 70% of water, because water is the main compounds in cells. All metabolic activities require water. Water is the medium of transport of foods, minerals, and other substances. We call that metabolic activities require water because there is a specific molecule called enzyme. Enzymes are very important molecules, and these enzymes only work with in aquatic environments. They only work with water, and water is medium for transport. For example, think about your blood composed of some kind of water, and this the molecules such as foods dissolve in water and carried in your blood. Life in aquatic medium such as seas or rivers depend on water qualities, because water is transparent. What does transparent mean? The sunlight, there is a sunlight here, and sunlight can pass through this transparent of the water and can reach at the bottom, at the deep side of the water, and the molecules, the organisms living under the water can make photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is very important reaction to produce organic compounds. Therefore, when the light reaches the bottom of the water, the organisms can make photosynthesis and they can produce food for themselves and for other organisms. And other qualities of water, think about the fishes. They use the water dissolved in, they use the oxygen dissolved in water by their gills. Gills in Turkish solungaç. And this quality of water, this salt oxygen quality, helps the living of such kind of organisms. And water has a high specific heat. What this quality help in for organisms? We cool off by sweating in hot days. It's like sweating. Body loses heat to evaporate water. And when you evaporate water during, for example, when you evaporate water during sweating, you have to give some heat from your body for water molecule for evaporation. So you lose heat and you cool off. You cool down. You cool off. So when your body loses some heat to evaporate water during sweating, you cool down. So changes in the heat of water is slow, so it affects the climate. Think about Ankara and Antalya. Ankara is far from the water, but Antalya is near to the seaside. Therefore, the seaside, you see the changes. You see in this picture, there is a seaside land, seaside cities, and there is a far from the cities, and you see the differences in the temperature. The water, the effect of large body of water absorbing or releasing heat by oceans. You feel these things when you go to Antalya at the nights. You feel the air is less cold or less, it's some kind of smooth weather, because water, it takes time to water to release heat or absorb heat. When in the sunlight the water absorbs heat, and in the nights, during night, this water, the heat is released to the air. Please remember, density of water is maximum at 4 centigrade degree. So water moves downward and exchange heat with surrounding. It helps deep sea water have fairly narrow temperature change. During winter ice sheets, the water makes ice sheets on the top of the lakes or on the top of the streams, and therefore the organism under the stream can live. Let's draw some kind of land. This is a lake, and when this is the top of the lake, when the temperature is under the, for example, under 5 centigrade degree, below 5 centigrade degree, the water starts to become ice at the top, because ice is less dense liquid water, less dense, and water is densest at 4 centigrade degree. So when the weather is very cold, the fish or the living organisms can live under the water, because of the ice are covering the top, but the life under the water is still exists. This picture explains this picture is the ice crystals and this picture is the liquid water molecules. You see there are hydrogen bonds. And these hydrogen bonds in this crystal structure helps the water molecule to separate each other, and there is a more space between water molecules. But in liquid form, the hydrogen bonds always break down and reform, always. And therefore, this molecule, the water molecules, can be more close to each other. You see, the water molecules amount is very high in the same volume, but in the same volume in the ice, water molecule amount is less. So we can say ice is less than liquid water. So therefore, the ice is on the top of the lakes, and under the ice, under water, the organism can live during the winter. And another characteristic of water is cohesion. Cohesion means the attraction between water molecules because of hydrogen bond. It's very simple and correct definition of cohesion. One water molecule attracts to other water molecule because water has two kind of elements. One is oxygen, others is hydrogen, and this oxygen is partially negative and hydrogens are partially positive charge. And you know the negative and positive charges attract each other. Therefore, the positive charge in this hydrogen is attract to each other by the negative charge of the oxygen of other water molecules. And we call this attraction. And forming hydrogen bonds, we call these qualities of water cohesion. Another characteristic of water is adhesion, and adhesion is the attraction, but not water between the water molecules, but adhesion of water between other molecules. For example, adhesion of water helps water to cell walls by hydrogen bonds, help counter the downward pull of gravity in the water transport in the trees. In this picture you see water molecules. Can be attract to this xylem and phloem. There is some kind of water conducting cells in the stem of the plants, and in the roots and stem of the plants, actually called xylem. This is xylem. Xylem walls attract water molecules to each other, and water molecules can be transferred from roots to top of the trees. And adhesion helps this. The characteristics of adhesion of water helps to carry the water from roots to the top of the trees. Why the adhesion or cohesion occur? It's results from these partially charges, partially negative of oxygen with partially positive hydrogens. The cohesion results the surface tension on the lakes or on the rivers. For example, this is the lake, and on the lake the water molecules there is a cohesion between water molecules, and each water molecule attracts to the other water molecules in the near. Therefore, there is some kind of surface tension, and on this surface tension, some insects can walk on this surface tension because they balance their weight in their legs, and therefore they can walk on the water because there is a attraction between water molecules, and it means like very tiny small surface tension. And another characteristic, water is a good solvent. We know when a liquid that is a complete homogeneous mixture of two or more substances is called solution. And dissolving agent of a solution we call solvent, and water is a good solvent. And dissolved substances, for example, in sea we call salt is solute and water is a solvent. And aqueous solution is one of which water is a good solvent. Water is a good solvent because of these partial charges. For example, if the molecule is molecule with charge, for example, sodium and chloride, like water, salt, the positive molecule, the positive ion, like sodium, is surrounded by negative side of the water, but with oxygens. But if the molecule is negative charge, like chloride, it's surrounded by negative charge of positive charge of hydrogens. So water molecule can be a good solvent because of these partially negative and positive charges on the molecules. For example, think about some kind of molecules, like some kind of enzymes, the proteins, and it has some negative or positive charges because it's a big molecule, it's a protein, and water helps to dissolve this molecule that surrounds this molecule because water has both negative and positive charges. Any substance that has the affinity for water is said to be hydrophilic. Philic means loving, so hydrophilic or hydrophobic, there are two words. Hydrophilics, the molecules which loves water, which can attach to water, which can come close to the water. But hydrophobic, you see the word phobia, fearing. These hydrophobic molecules not likes to get closer to waters. For example, vegetable oil, it cannot mix with water. It's hard to mix water with oil because oil is very hydrophobic molecule. Okay, we learned the characteristics of water. The second inorganic compounds is acids and bases. Acids is a substance. It's a very simple definition. Acid is a substance that produces hydrogen ions when dissolved in water. In Turkish, sulu çözeltisine hidrojen iyonu veren moleküllere asit, sulu çözeltisine hidroksit iyonu veren moleküllere baz denir. A chemical that contains equal amount of hydrogen and hydroxide ion is called neutral. You see, hydrochloric acid gives, when dissolved in water, it gives hydrogen ion, but sodium hydroxide, it gives hydroxide ion, so it's a base. Ammoniac also, it gives hydroxide ion, it's a kind of base. You remember the pH scale is used to measure the concentration of hydrogen ions, and it measures the acidity or basicity of the molecules. You know pure water is neutral and pH value is 7 if it is neutral. If the pH value decreases, for example pH 0 or pH, for example stomach acid is nearly pH 2 or 0.5, lemon juice is nearly 2, vinegar, soft drinks, tomato, black coffee, milk, these all acidic, but the acidity amount decreases. But human blood, very slightly basic human blood is actually 7.4 and it's very important pH level, and it shouldn't be changed because if the pH value of human blood change, all the equilibrium, the homeostasis of human body change. It may result the death of the organisms. You see some kind of acids and bases. If the hydrogen and hydroxide amount is equal, we call this neutral. If the hydrogen amount is, hydrogen ion amount is, we call this acidic. If the hydroxide amount is high, we call this basic solid. What are the differences between acids and bases? You remember from the previous years, acids have sour taste, bases have bitter taste. Acids turn blue litmus papers into red, but base turn red litmus paper into blue. Litmus paper in Turkish turnusol kağıdı. The example of acids are hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid. These are strong acid, and there is acetic acid. It's a weak acid. Organic bases generally have carbon and nitrogen in their structure. Generally, for example, sodium hydroxide or calcium hydroxide is the example of the bases. What happens with the increased amount of acidity in the living organisms? For example, normal rain acid value is nearly 5.5. Normal rain acidity. But if the acidity, the pH value of the rain because of the air pollution decreases between 2, it can decreases to the 2, then the environment, mostly the plants die because of this acid value. It kills the tree. What is buffer? Buffer is very specific solution substance that minimize the change in the concentration of hydrogen and hydroxide ions. Buffers keep the pH value of the solution or in living organism, for your blood, human blood for example. It should keep the same pH value. Therefore, there is some kind of buffers which arrange these minimize changes in your body. And when the hydrogen level increases, when the acidity increases, it collects these hydrogens. When the base increases, it again releases these hydrogen molecules and keep the pH value of human body very constant. It keeps homeostasis. And these buffers are always you have these buffers in your blood or in your other body fluids. And in Turkish, buffers called tampon çözelti. Tampon çözelti. And the last one is minerals and salts. We know when the acids and bases combine, they form salt and water. This is the neutralization reaction. These are some kind of important minerals, for example, magnesium, calcium, iron. Some of them, these are trace elements, and they are important. There are many roles in the body. For example, magnesium work as a cofactor. Cofactor means it's a helper of enzymes, some inorganic molecules which helps the enzymes in metabolic activities. For example, calcium is important for your bones and teeth. You obtain calcium from milk, and when you not obtain very good amount of calcium in your diet, you are lack of calcium and your bone structures get less healthy. Also, it helps the works of muscle contraction. For example, iron is a kind of red substance, dark brown or red, and you see there is a hemoglobin molecule in your red blood cells, and these hemoglobin molecules have in the center have iron molecule. Therefore, your blood color is red actually because of iron. There is a phosphorus found in the structure of nucleic acid, and ATP, and you see the P1 adenosine 3 phosphate. Adenosine 3 phosphate, this phosphate, or in DNA and RNA structure there is a phosphate. Sodium, important for adjusting heart beating, muscle contraction, enzyme working. And chlorine is important for stomach fluid because there is a hydrochloric acid in your stomach, and the acidity is important for. Stomach fluid. There is iodine effective in thyroid hormone. You remember the disease of goiter. Fluor is important for teeth. Therefore, in the teeth, in your tooth, you brush your tooth with fluorine. And there is a potassium important in acid and base equilibrium, nerve function, and there are many more minerals, and these all are inorganic. We obtain these minerals from other, for example, when we drink these minerals, when we eat soda or some kind of water, and these minerals we obtain these some kind of food in the environment, but these are inorganic and these are important. They need very tiny amount for body, but they are important for the human or other organisms' health. Okay, with the minerals we finished the lessons of inorganic compounds. Thank you for watching.